At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Sonal, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Doug. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm really pleased to have you on the show. I find that everybody comes from such a different perspective in areas that they really have a specialty in, and in your case, it's meditation. And so I think we're going to have a really interesting discussion here. What I'd love for you to do, though, is to kind of share with the audience who you are and what is the journey that brought you to this point of doing what you're doing.
Thank you. I think that's a beautiful question, especially when you talk about the journey, because we all have such unique and beautiful journeys. And I love that when you started off, you said that, each one comes with their own unique and beautiful perspective. About me, my name is Sonal, as you and everyone who's listening in knows, who's viewing this, and I teach meditation. But where my journey started was a long time ago. So this was from a question which came up in my childhood many times. And this question was, why is there suffering in the world? And somehow the answers which would come in terms of karma or any other, just wouldn't resonate with me. And I kept searching. And that brought me to a place wherein I wanted to know a lot about human psyche, about what we think, why we think the way we do, and basically questions with related to our psyche as such. And therefore, after my high school, I decided to do an honors in psychology. So I majored in psychology, then went on to the business world, and I did an MBA and started working in the business world, in the corporate world, worked with companies like Gap, Heidrick & Struggles, which is an American company into C-level consulting, they into search and leadership assessment. I was with them with the HR and then training and development. As I started moving more and more into training and development, I realized that I wanted to specialize more into life coaching. So went on to life coaching. And then over a period of time, I realized that in all these years, out of all the tools and processes that I had, if I could zero down on any one process which had the highest ROI, it was meditation. And so if anybody is ready, is receptive to it, is open to it, then this process had a lot of benefit. And therefore, during the pandemic, as we all know, that there was so much of asking as far as our mental health is concerned, for everybody, for all of us around the world. And that's when I decided to go more into meditation. And I weaned off my life coaching clients slowly as per their readiness, of course. And then I started teaching meditation per se more and more. Which is, of course, through my own company, Connect Meditation, and also through an organization based in SF, San Francisco. So we do a lot of work with corporates, groups in corporates, and as well as groups outside of corporates.
So where are you from?
I'm originally from India.
Okay.
So I was born in India.
Born in India, and now you're living where?
I'm in Boston. I'm based now in Boston. So moved here around 2013. But I'm glad you asked about India, where I'm originally from, because that's where I actually got initiated into meditation. So this was at the age of 9. So typically in India, a lot of us, not everybody, but a lot of us who get into meditation are initiated in the childhood. So somewhere around the age of 8, 9, 10 would be the initiation. And that's what happened with me. Though I must confess, Doug, that in my childhood, I wasn't very regular. I was more interested in playing and, doing the other things that children usually do. But as far as my adult life is concerned, it pretty much has been part of my adult life for a long time now.
All right. And you've been in the U.S. now for how many years, if you don't mind me asking?
Absolutely. I moved in 2013, so it would be a little more than 10 years.
Okay. So here's something that I find fascinating. As you may or may not know, because I put it when we were communicating, I'm in Thailand. Okay. And what fascinates me is the Asian culture, and particularly this concept of meditation and so forth. But what have you found now that you've been in, the U.S. for a while, and thinking back to all of the things you've learned, particularly even as a child in India, what do you find about the Eastern traditions and wisdom that comes from the Asia area? And how are you able to actually implement that into a society today that has really never really understood that? And yet it's probably something that we all desperately need.
What a beautiful question. And you've articulated it so beautifully. It's so deep. This question I can go like really deep, but for the sake of, the time, keep that time in mind.
You know
Uh,
what? You
yes,
can go a little bit deep if you want. I'm okay with that.
yes, yes. Thank you. And yes, I did know about Thailand because you had mentioned it in the emails that we had exchanged before this. So I did know about Thailand. Uh, for me personally, I think all through my life, it was almost like I was being readied for this moment, for what I'm doing, the work that I'm doing. I consider it not just work in the traditional sense of the word, it's more like a calling, a purpose. And even from the time I took birth in the family, like my parents are from different religions. So my mother is a Christian and my father's a Hindu. So suddenly I had the Sanskrit prayers from my father's side, but the Our Father in Heaven from my mother's side. The main message was just be good, be a good human being, and be kind, and all that was the main message. But I just felt that the amalgamation of the Eastern wisdom traditions and the Western, in fact, even if you look in the West, a lot of times I find so many similarities. When you go to the temple of Delphi, Apollo in Delphi, you actually, one of the things which is inscribed is know thyself, which is very similar to one of the Eastern wisdom traditions which I follow in my life and in my work, which is called non-duality, Advait Vedanta, which is from India. And again, know yourself. That's supposed to be the key for end to all suffering. So in different ways, different philosophies around the world have said. But because of my background, plus also the fact that I've done my undergraduation in Western psychology. So again, I could see similarities, when a Jung would say something. So for example, he would talk about mass unconsciousness or some of the other concepts. Or William James, the father of American psychology, beautiful things. In fact, he's known, I haven't seen, I wasn't born that time, but apparently what I've read is that he used to go to attend lectures in New York at the non-duality, the Advait Vedanta Center. So I feel that when I'm in my classes, when I'm in my sessions and my workshops, whether they are people who are from India or people who have been born and brought up here in the West, because of the fact that I understand that part of the traditional approach as well as this part, I'm able to put it across in a way in which a lot of people, the feedback which is given is this concept is, especially when it comes to the advanced, like I said, deeper ones, in terms of knowing yourself. Who are you? Are you this? Is this all there is to you? Or there's something more than a large self? A feedback which is given is that it's a very abstract concept. But how can we make it palatable? How can we make it doable, practical? How can we understand it? Of course, as per the unique place where each person is in their own unique and beautiful journey, but putting it across. And I think because I'm able to do it simply because of my background, in terms of I can
Yeah.
amalgamate the two. I see the beauty in both.
Well, and you know what I have found fascinating is, and I am a Christian, and yet sometimes now as people ask me, what religion are you? I say, well, I'm kind of a Buddhist Christian,
Very
and
nice.
the reason I say that is I've done a great deal of research about the similarities. Now, obviously, there are some things that are not quite the same, but the similarities and the real basic teachings are so similar as far as the point of number one, reaching a point where you truly have become your inner divine higher self. All of those type of things I think are just amazing. And the goodness, the love, the kindness, all of those type of things are just so fascinating. And I think a lot of people, particularly, well, it's changing now, but I would not know what the percentage is. But in the US, still, I think there's a little bit of hesitation about meditation because they keep thinking, oh, it's this, it's that religion, so on and so forth. When in reality, it's really a scientifically based way now in which we can really clear our minds. In fact, I was just doing a blog on this, how if we take the right brain and the left brain and bring them together is when we literally are able to start accomplishing so many things, not only good health, but clarity, all that. And guess what? That can only really be accomplished through meditation.
You said it. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
do you have a unique meditation style? And I find, I've interviewed a lot of different people, and they have this kind of meditation, that kind of meditation, and they all believe in the one that they've developed, and it's been very successful for them. So, have you developed a specific type of meditation, or do you follow a specific type of meditation that you have found over the years seems to work for you and those people whom you work with?
How I would share my thoughts on this would be that I'll tell you a little bit about what all meditations I know, and then depending on where I am. So, for example, if I am in a school or I'm in the corporate world, then I know that the offerings are going to be very non-traditional. And I totally understand that, and I totally respect, because I feel it's so important to work with whatever your audience is comfortable with. That's my feeling, of course.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's a very non-traditional approach. It's on mindfulness, it's on the breath, we do body relaxations. And I found that focusing on the body, this is just the fact that you can bring awareness and then you bring relaxation. So you bring mindfulness and you bring relaxation. Just these two techniques, something as simple as that, has profound impact. Something as simple and basic as this. And of course, then you have the breath. I'm also trained in somatic EMDR. I bring in those modalities in terms of those techniques. And then if it is a yoga festival, for example, then I would get into the chakra meditation, because I know that that audience would be comfortable with something like that. So then we go into chakras. I'm also, since you mentioned about different religions, Paramhansa Yogananda, who's also one of my teachers. He has this yoga called Kriya Yoga, in which they give a lot of importance to the brain and the spinal cord. And we have a lot of processes to energizing techniques, and of course, different techniques in that. And one of the, if I could call it, gurus in Kriya Yoga is Christ. So, how it's just looking at what is the message, where is this message, how beautiful this message is, irrespective of whichever source it comes from in that sense. But again, coming back to your question, so depending on where I am, I would put that across. In my own work, I've found breath sometimes, especially after the pandemic, could be a little bit could provide a little discomfort for some people, simply because some of us developed respiratory problems during the pandemic, and therefore something like breath, which actually does not have much of a resistance for most of us, but if somebody has had something like this, could be. So then we get into other objects of meditation, just the body, just it could be any other particular object which can be more non-stressful in that sense, and we get along to that. It could be just a butterfly hug. So we get in somatic EMDR. So again, when you say right and left brain, you'll be so interested in this, since you've talked about right and left brain. Dan Siegel has done a lot of work in this. He's a psychiatrist at UCLA, and he's also executive director of the Mindsight Institute here in the US. And he's in fact written a book also on the books. Of course, there are many books like that in that sense, but right. Especially when I talk about his work. And when you talk about how integrating them, so there's this Human Connectome project run by the NIH, and they have number of studies, and what they're studying is the brain, the human brain, and how we can study it in such a way that we can come to know things which can help enhance our well-being for human beings as such, as a race. And they found out a number of studies that they conducted on a number of people, and they found out that the neural correlate for something being a predictor of well-being in almost every instance, if there is one predictor like that, was integration. That means how different parts, as far as the brain is concerned, as far how different parts are differentiated. They're different, but yet how they're linked together, how they're integrated. And you so beautifully said that how mindfulness or meditation as such is something which can just bringing awareness can actually lead to that integration. So it's a beautiful.
Yes, and it's interesting as I've studied it, to see that, right brain, left brain. I mean, I'm a certified behavioral analyst, and so I've gotten a lot into personalities, personality types, and so forth. And so often that focuses on right brain, left brain, introvert, extrovert, all those type of things. But as I started reading more about the integration and the combination of the right brain and left brain, which we all can do, so we don't have to be set in one or the other, that's where we start to have the clarity. That's where we start to really experience the health. All of those things that can happen as we're doing that. And I appreciate the fact that as you're talking about the different types of meditation, everyone is different. And I find that they need to find something that works for them.
Yes. Yes, and you always have the freedom of changing your mind. So, you have a Rupert Spira, who's a wonderful, wonderful teacher of non-duality, who for years, for 20 years, did the mantra meditation. And then he moved into something which we call as Advaita Vedanta, which is a little different. All approaches are, like you said, all approaches talking about the same thing, their own unique and beautiful ways. So depending on where you are, listen, this is what works for me now. Maybe for the last 20 years, this is what worked for me. So A, we can choose, and B, we always can change our minds. Plus, I'm going to take it off. Sorry.
As you've been helping people, what are some of the experiences that your clients have had? Can you share a few stories about what they've experienced? And obviously, you've gotten some feedback, which oftentimes we don't. It's so interesting that we work hard at trying to make a difference for people, and we don't always get feedback as far as what that success was for them. But I know you had a couple of feedbacks at least. What are some that you can share with us about some of the successes that people have achieved in their lives by working with you and going through that meditation process?
Well, I think first I want to thank all of those who have written in. I think it's been very gracious on their part to share what they felt. And I'm going to take your invite to go a little deeper, which you told a little while ago. So there are many people who would come into a workshop or a meditation session and feel calmer. So that's something which comes in immediately, and from many people attending, even if they don't attend another one, for example, if it's in a corporate situation. So we're doing a session or we don't go into a program as such. Even if it's just once, the first surface level benefit is calm. But where I would like to put it across is some of the participants who went on, who have been with me for a certain number of years in that sense, and how they've gone deeper into knowing who they are. So like when I look at meditation, a lot of people feel that, that can make you feel relaxed. It can make you feel calm. Of course it can. And of course it does bring awareness. But that is the surface level. We go beyond that. And we go beyond that to a deeper level in which we actually come to know not just that we are not just the mind and body, but we are so much more. And once you can know that in law itself, which encompasses the mind and body, of course, this is magnificent. It helps us do so many things in this world, but there's so much more to us than that. Once you know that, that is what is known as liberation in that sense in the Eastern wisdom traditions, or moksha, as it is called, sometimes in nirvana or nibbana, as the Buddha called it in Pali. So different words, but basically that. Again, as per the readiness of this participant, wherever the participant in that particular journey, wherever he is or she is in their journey. So ones who have taken that steps towards the deeper side, whether they are intermediate level of their meditation journey or advanced levels, now we have people who would actually start tasting what inner freedom truly is, because we can get freedom from everybody else. But in our minds, if we are still thinking about whatever is making us uncomfortable and it's coming up like a pattern, then we are never free, because your mind is with you all the time.
You're never free. You're still under stress, and the medical implications of being under stress and the cortisol levels and everything and how it affects, in fact, and I have not studied this very deeply, but I was interviewing someone the other day talking about the studies that were done on water and how there were two different groups, and there, I see you know that, where you may be able to explain it better than I can as far as what happened when they showed a group of people using just kind words and a group of people using angry, unkind words, and what happened to the water.
Yes. So the one that I am aware of is, of course, there's a lot of work which has been done by an Australian lady, but the one that I'm going to refer to is by a Japanese scientist. And forgive me, but I'm not getting his name right now, but he's a Japanese scientist, and he's shown this beautifully that when he spoke kind words to the water, they formed such beautiful crystalline patterns. And whereas the crystals which were formed in the world, when the words were spoken like rude words or unkind words, they were totally so different in shape. They're just not beautiful in that sense. Whereas you can actually go on the net if anyone's listening to it or viewing this video when it gets released. I would love if you could go on the net and just do a little search. Water experiments, Japanese scientist. I wish I could get his name right now. I'm not getting his name. But beautiful experiments. I'm so glad you brought that up. That it shows. And actually, if you look at it, so much of our body is water.
Yes, absolutely. And like I say, I don't think we realize when we think about anger, stress, frustration, and we voice that or even feel that, not only is it affecting the water within our body, the liquid within our body, but also it's upping the cortisol, which causes all sorts of health issues. And it's amazing to me that I have met people and I have heard very credible stories of people who have used meditation to heal a number of different health issues that they have experienced. And to me, that is just fascinating. And I know that they're in Southern California right now, at University of San Diego, I think it is, Southern Cal, that there are a group of scientists that are studying this very carefully and observing scientifically the changes that take place within the body as meditation occurs.
Absolutely. In fact, I'm glad that you mentioned these studies. They're wonderful studies going on there. They also, if somebody's interested, University of Wisconsin has done amazing amount of work. They've actually had these monks, people who have had, of course, 60,000 hours, 72,000 hours of meditation behind them from their childhood and all they've been doing in monasteries. And they've been studying what are the differences in their brains. And beautiful. In fact, there's a book called Altered Traits, if anybody's interested, by Daniel Goleman and Richard Davidson. And this book has amazing amount of studies, exactly like, how research can show you what's the difference being made. And you're so true about stress. In fact, I was just listening, there's so much of data which is coming on right now. In 2023, there was this study done by Ipsos, and they found out in 31 countries around the world, they found out that 62% of the people said that they felt so stressed that they couldn't even function a lot of days, So imagine that kind. Back here in the US where I am based, the American Psychiatric Association released data recently in 2024, if I'm not mistaken, in which they said that 42% of the people said that they were even more anxious than last year. So, how it is, the suicide rates among even teenagers, adults, yes, but even among teenagers. So when you look at all this, you feel there's something so powerful. And I can tell you, can I share with you, and this is where I can get a little deeper.
Absolutely.
Why is it that meditation affects? Why is it that just the simple act of bringing, and the way I like to define mindfulness is present moment, non-judgmental awareness. So when you bring present moment, non-judgmental awareness, so there's a difference. And to illustrate this definition, I can give a little story. This is a story from the Himalayas. So there was a person who went to a teacher in the Himalayas, and he said, "I'm suffering. Please give me, I want some relief." So the teacher said, "Do you know you're suffering?" He said, "Of course I know I'm suffering. That's why I've come to you. I want some relief." He says, "If you know that you are suffering, then you are the knower and the suffering is the known. You are the seer and the suffering is the scenery." Or in Sanskrit, which is this ancient language where a lot of these texts in India are written, and of course there's some speakers around the world even now, you are the drishta and the suffering is the drishya, or the scene or the scenery that you're seeing. Now, this is a very powerful thing the teacher is doing. He is bringing a distance between the two. A lot of times we tend to identify, I am sad, I am angry, I am happy. Whereas what the teacher is trying to do is he's trying to get a distance between the feeling, the thought, and who is aware of that thought.
Yes.
And this distance, sorry.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. I mean, the emotions, and I love what you're saying there, how if you can separate who you are, your mind, your body, from the emotions that come up because of events and circumstances and all of that, you're right. Then all of a sudden you have the ability to eliminate those emotions. And, you know, one of the interesting things I saw in your biography is you talk about trauma and sensitive mindfulness. And I think, you know, we have all experienced trauma in our lives, one way or the other. I don't think there's anyone that hasn't experienced that. But you talk about a specialized training in something you call somatic EMDR. And could you share with the audience what that is and share with me? Because I'm not familiar with that.
Absolutely. So somatic EMDR combines two things, which is somatic therapy and EMDR. And up till recently, this EMDR was only open to therapists, but recently they decided to open it to everybody, all of us who are different spheres of life, but who are in the same sphere of healing. And EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So there's this lady called Francine Shapiro, who was one day taking a walk, and she was not feeling very good before the walk, but after she finished the walk, she felt better. And she said, how come? And she noticed that one of the things which is happening as we walk is that our eye movements, we go back this side to that side. And she said, maybe it's something to do with the eye movements. And she started researching on that. And that's when this entire eye movement desensitization reprocessing came about, which she brought about and she put it across. It's an 8-phase process in which you lead up, if it's between therapist and the client who's going through it, through these 8 stages in which you use eye movement in order to desensitize and reprocess the trauma. So for example, when a traumatic incident happens, and it could be major or minor, it got lodged into different parts of our brain. That's what, into fragments. And what mindfulness or meditation does is brings, like we talked about integration a little while ago, it integrates different parts of your brain. In the same way, this is also another modality which again brings them together. And we don't know right now, research hasn't really shown as to what exactly is the pinpointed reason for this. But suddenly when you have eye movements which go from left to right, you can have eye movements. Sometimes some people like to use buzzers for movements. Some people can use sounds, depending on wherever you're comfortable with. In somatic EMDR or somatic therapy, we tend to use bilateral movement also. So anything which basically left and right. As you start doing that, the beautiful, like I was telling you a little while ago, the butterfly hug. So when you have gentle tapping on this side and this side, so you cross the midline of your body, right side and left side. And as you do this, again, it tends to calm your amygdala down. So different modalities, whether it's meditation or somatic EMDR or EMDR per se or somatic therapy, Peter Levin has done an amazing amount of work in the field of somatic experiencing. So that also those got added into the course.
Well, and it's fascinating. And, you know, we're talking about different things, but it's fascinating. As I think about the eye movement, you know, initially from my background, I would look at that and go, oh, come on. But I know I've heard enough stories that it works. And, you know, how it works, I have no clue. It'd be interesting to read some studies if they figured out why the eye movement works. But you've got one other thing that you talk about, and that's the sound healing and the benefits of using sound. Now, when you're talking about that, are you talking about listening to binaural beats in music? Or are you talking about crystals? What are you talking about when it's persistent, you know, particularly the Tibetan singing crystals, bowls and so forth? What have you found sound does?
Okay. So in a lot of traditions, Doug, when somebody is not able to meditate, either on the breath or anything, and someone would like to, supposing, and is not able to, then a lot of traditions suggest sound. Because sound is very easy to center into, to come into the present moment, because it's happening right now as you're listening to it. In fact, a lot of musicians in India, where I'm originally from, there's a thought process which says that how aligned are you to your consciousness? And for musicians, composers, they say they're very aligned to who they are because they are in that present moment. They right now here in the present moment. And we also looked at the fact a little while ago as to how a lot of our body is water. And as you know, water is supposed to carry sound, it can carry light, it can carry energy. So a lot of things water can carry. And when you're listening to sound, the sound baths that I do are basically, as you rightly said, crystal bowls. I also get in tingshaw bells. I also get in Koshi chimes. So a lot of things which I get in, which I have found have worked for me and for the participants over the years. And what it does is, it basically, the water, this is where my feeling comes from, the water component in your body, it just tends to somewhere attune to that. And the vibrations which are felt. So one is the sound that you hear, but also the vibrations that you feel of the crystal bowls. And slowly, as you find that the parasympathetic nervous system starts to get activated. So if you're stressed, sometimes some of the participants actually said that, listen, when I came for the sound bath, I was having a headache, but after that, I'm feeling better. And I feel that's because the parasympathetic nervous system has started getting activated. And just to tell the viewers, of course, someone for whom this might be a new word, so our autonomic nervous system is divided into two parts. One is sympathetic, and one is the parasympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic is, a lot of times, it is called as the fight or flight, which is basically kinds of stress. And the parasympathetic is rest and digest. That's when we like to wine and dine. And that's the one in which we have the calm response. Though Stephen Porges, who gave us the polyvagal theory, beautifully talks about also another part which goes beyond this, which is the shutdown, where there is actually a vagal shutdown. So you can have a place wherein you become so calm, or it goes to a place wherein you are absolutely frozen. So then the modalities to get you to a place, so if you can imagine, say, a river, and one bank is a sympathetic and one bank is a parasympathetic. And you have a boat which can sometimes go towards the parasympathetic, sometimes towards sympathetic. Sometimes you get a little stressed in life, sometimes you get a little calmer. But there comes a time wherein you would want to be in the middle, the middle of the river as such, or the river as such, rather than towards any bank. But sometimes the parasympathetic side could be so much that you're going to shut down. So then if a person is in a shutdown mode and would like to come back into the middle, the river as such, then the modalities would be, how can we get more activity into this person? But it could be just, for example, the person wants to just lay down on the floor of his bedroom. That's it. I don't want to get up also. So it's just the fact of going and sitting next to the window could be the thing for that person. But if somebody's stressed, then we want to calm that person down. So then we could have relaxation technique in order to get that person back towards the river. So just a little on the parasympathetic.
And, I love it. I actually have a personal story on that. And without going too deeply into it, one of my sons and his wife experienced just a tremendous trauma in their life of losing a child. And a few years later, it was still so heavy on my son's mind. I know that it was affecting him. And one day, someone that I knew called me and said, hey, I'm going to do some crystal, rings and bowls, and I'd love for you to come and try it out. And so I called my son and said, hey, let's go do this. And so we went up to another place. It was in water. So it was in an enclosed kind of cave type of thing, but there was water all around. A number of people were there. We all popped into the water and just kind of floated and listened to those crystal bowls and the different sounds. And afterwards, a week later, my son said to me, Dad, I can't believe it, but that pain is gone. That emotional pain is gone. And it just fascinated me how whatever we think might not work, if we just take the opportunity to try it out and experiment with it. And again, everybody has different experiences, but the reality is that I think everyone can find some type of modality that is going to help them to achieve that sense of peace, start to remove, as you say, and desensitize the trauma that we've all experienced in our lives. And I don't know how to really help people understand how important it is that these modalities have come out in our time. And if they would just be understanding and willing to try something out and keep trying until something they find works for them, it can make an entire difference in their lives.
Oh yes, absolutely. And like you so beautifully said that, just as long as of course one is open to it, to trying whichever one resonates with oneself. And all of them in their own unique and beautiful ways are connecting to awareness.
Yeah.
Connecting to awareness, I mean, like for example, if you are in a sound bath, you might think you're listening to sound, but again, it's a present moment, non-judgmental, because it's just happening right there and then. And in the Eastern wisdom traditions, when students who are a little in the advanced levels or may not have really, right from the beginning, have been like that, there have been some wonderful teachers around the world which have been pretty much in the starting of their journey. Doug, are we keeping an eye on the time? Are we past the time?
No. I was just looking at something here, a note that I had
No
written.
So one of the Eastern wisdom traditions, like I was saying, is the non-duality, and they talk about awareness. And there is a very famous line in that, which is Tat Tvam Asi, which basically means that thou art. So it's a little deeper, and now this is the part where I'm going a little deeper. I'm going to take your invite to go a little deeper. That, of course, we have the breath. We focus on the breath. Suddenly you feel calming down. There comes a point wherein you turn inwards as to who is aware of this breath. So that, of course, in everyone's journey. Now you're getting into a little deeper forms, or you're doing yoga for that matter, all the 8 stages. Again, you're getting into that from a body perspective, then you start moving into deeper meditation. Or you're doing somatic EMDR, or any other crystal bowls, or any other, modality. There are beautiful modalities around. What you're doing is you're connecting to who you are. Here I'm going to bring in one of our favorite characters. I usually keep him on my desk. I'm going to show it. A lot of us would remember Yoda. Yeah. So Yoda from Star Wars series, for those of us who know and who have seen it and who love it, we would know that he said, "May the force be with you," one of the lines. And what I feel what he was talking about is, so if anyone is interested, if they go on the Star Wars official website, there's a page out there in which it's mentioned about a person called Joseph Campbell. So Joseph Campbell was a professor of literature at Sarah Lawson College, and he was somebody who was a friend of George Lucas. So even though George Lucas has not said specifically, but in that page mentioned that there was an influence. So what's so special about Joseph Campbell? One of the lines which you would have heard a lot of times would be "follow your bliss," which there's these teachers called Abraham Hicks who call it as one of the most profound words ever uttered by a human being. And Joseph Campbell got this line from one of the Sanskrit verses, which is called Sat Chit Anand, which basically is existence, knowledge, bliss. Existence, consciousness, bliss. And this again from the Eastern wisdom traditions. A little deeper, I'm not going too much into it. But the reason why I'm mentioning this is because the force, which I feel what was being referred to in the movie, was something which is known as the fourth. So yes, there's this Eastern wisdom traditions, which we call as non-duality, and they talk about 4 stages of consciousness, states of consciousness: waking, which right now we are awake; sleeping, and then you have deep dreamless sleep. So we have 3 states of consciousness, and then there is a 4th, which in Sanskrit is typically called Turiya, which just means the 4th. There's no description to it. And this state is present in all of these. And these are just appearances of the 4th. The 4th is who we are, according to this particular state. So yes, are we this? Mind and body? But like I said, there's so much more to us. So let me give you a little example to understand this a little better. There's a brilliant scientist, I think in the last century or something, if I'm not mistaken. His name was Wilder Penfield. And he did a lot of experiments on consciousness. He wanted to understand what is consciousness. And one of the experiments he did was, he was a neurosurgeon, so he was doing a surgery on the brain. And apparently in those days, because the brain does not feel pain, you didn't need to give anesthesia. So he was stimulating a particular part of the brain which is responsible for motor movements of the body. So the patient which was there moved his hand up and down. So Dr. Penfield asked, what are you doing? He says, I'm not doing anything. You're stimulating a part and therefore my hand is going up and down. He says, okay, now I'm going to stimulate the same part, but I want you not to move your hand the way it goes up and down, not that way. Move it some other way or don't move it at all. So in some of the instances that they did, in one instance, the patient was able to put his other hand and stop his hand. And in one instance, he was actually able to move it in another way, rather than the way in which it was moving all this while because of that particular stimulation. And so with this simple experiment, Dr. Penfield came to the conclusion that there is a choice maker in all of us, making choices all the time. And he says, I know where the command post is, but where this choice maker is, where this commander of the post is, I don't know. Because when I look inside, all I see is bones, muscle, blood, nerves, etc. But where is this choice maker which is doing all this? So there's this beautiful principle called the Occam's principle in science, which says that Occam was a scientist who gave this, and he says that when you can't find the answer to a particular problem, then in all probability, the simplest answer is the answer. So what could be the answer for if you can't be found in your body? If I go inside, if I do an fMRI scan, all I find is muscles and bones and tissue and all, but that choice maker is nowhere to be seen or nowhere to be perceived. What can be the answer for that? That if I don't see it, the simplest answer could be because that choice maker is not there. So if the choice maker is not in the body, then where is the choice maker?
Yes.
So this was one of the brilliant insights of the sages and seers in India, that you, who you are, your body is an experience in you. Your mind is an experience in you. The world is an experience in you. And you, who you are, Tattvamasi, that thou art, is what we are trying to.
Amen. Your true self, your higher self, whatever word we want to use. And you're right. We've come to a point where we're running out of time.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. Do you mainly work with businesses? Do you work with individuals also that are not high-end businesses, or what? Who do you work with mainly?
Typically I work with groups. If there is an individual clients that I've taken on, these are clients who I know are at a place wherein, like, they're at a particular point in their journey where they're ready for this work that I'm doing, like when I go into the deeper levels. Because again, if it's just a meditation, and all my colleagues, all the teachers out there in the world, beautiful work each one of us is doing. But I feel where I can really add in to an individual's journey could be there, wherein who you are. Who are you?
How do people find you?
So they can go on my website, which is www.connectmeditation.com, which is CONNECTMEDITATION.com. They can also write into me at sonal@connectmeditation.com. I would love to hear.
Great. And as we close, what would be that final message that you'd like to share with the audience?
Well, I'm going to borrow it from some of the wisdom traditions, and I'm going to say, if there's any one thing that you can do for yourself, that would be the key to end to suffering for you, would be knowing who you are. Yes, you are this, the mind and body, which is so magnificent, but the enlarged self, there's so much more to you than that. And my sense would be, if you can know that, that'll be just lovely for you to get rid of that endless suffering.
Amen to that. And I love that. Sonal, thanks so much for being on the show. It's fascinating to hear these different perspectives.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Thank you to all of the listeners, the viewers. Thank you for your presence. And thank you so much, Doug, for this beautiful talk that we had, the conversation, the wonderful, wonderful questions. And I want to end this with a little hug, not a little hug, a big hug to you, and more to your son, to his wife, for what they have gone through. And I'm sure I'll wish that as time goes, they're able to find the relief that they're seeking.
Yes, and he did, and it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. Well, thank you. And folks, thanks for listening. Hope you've enjoyed this, and we have really desire to have you join us again and learn a little bit more about the different things that we talk about. So this is Dr. Doug saying namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.